My son dropped me at the airport, secretly canceled my ticket, and texted figure out how to get home. I didn't beg or argue. I just replied, "Are you sure you want to do this?" He laughed, thinking I had nowhere to turn. But minutes later, one phone call exposed the mistake he made. He had no idea I already knew his plan and what I was about to take back. So thankful to have you here at Silent Sweet Revenge. Tell me in the comments which country or city are you joining from today. Please note, fictional elements were added for entertainment and educational value. Any resemblance to actual names or locations is strictly coincidental, but the message speaks for itself. My name is Walter Hayes. I am 68 years old, and I built this house with my own hands. Not metaphorically. Not the way people say it when they mean they hired a good contractor and picked out the tile themselves. I mean, I drew the plans on graph paper at the kitchen table, poured the foundation on a cold October morning in 1989, and drove every load-bearing nail myself. My wife Carol Ann stood in the mud in rubber boots and handed me lumber while our neighbors watched from their driveways like we'd lost our minds. Maybe we had. But 36 years later, that house is still standing without a single mortgage attached to it. I spent 40 years as a structural engineer in the Pacific Northwest. Bridges mostly. A few municipal buildings. Work that required you to get the numbers exactly right, because the alternative wasn't a bad quarterly report, it was people falling into a river. I retired 3 years ago, not because my mind had slowed down, but because I'd done enough. My hands knew it. My body knew it. And after Carol Ann passed 5 years ago, the office started to feel like a place I was hiding in rather than working at. So I came home. To this house, to this yard, to the 2 acres of Douglas fir that block the wind off the Sound in winter. I planted a vegetable garden that Carol Ann always wanted. I fixed the gutter on the north side that I'd been meaning to get to for a decade. I learned to cook something other than scrambled eggs. And I kept giving money to my son. Daniel is 38. He has my jaw and his mother's temper, and somewhere along the way he developed a third quality that belongs entirely to himself. An absolute certainty that the world owed him a comfortable life. He opened a residential contracting business 7 years ago. Hayes Construction, he called it. I was proud of that. I told Robert about it over coffee, and I remember feeling something warm in my chest when I said the words out loud. My son, the business owner. "How's the cash flow?" Robert asked. Because Robert has been a director at a regional construction consortium for 20 years, and he asks questions like that the way other people ask about the weather. "He's getting started," I said. "It takes time." Robert nodded and didn't say anything else. That was Robert's way of saying he had his doubts. The first time Daniel called asking for money, it was $14,000 to cover a payroll gap. A client had delayed payment on a mid-size bathroom renovation. Perfectly reasonable. It happens to every small contractor. I transferred the money the same afternoon and told him to call me anytime. The second time was $22,000. A piece of excavation equipment had broken down on a job, and the rental company needed a deposit on a replacement before they'd release it. I transferred the money and didn't ask for paperwork. By the 5th or 6th time, I had stopped counting the individual amounts and started watching the pattern instead. The calls always came on a Friday. Daniel's voice always had that particular tightness in it, not quite desperation, but close enough to make a father's chest tighten in response. And the reasons were always plausible, always just specific enough to sound real. A lien threat from a subcontractor. An insurance deductible on a job site injury, a materials supplier who wouldn't release an order without a cleared balance. I transferred the money. Every time. One evening I called Robert and told him what I'd been doing. I didn't give him the total. I wasn't ready to say that number out loud yet. I just described the pattern. Robert listened without interrupting, which is unusual for him. "Walter," he said when I finished. Robert's words from that phone call had never left me. I had spent a week avoiding them before I admitted he was right. The truth was harder to look at than I'd expected. After Carol Ann died, Daniel had started showing up at my door late in the evenings when I didn't transfer money fast enough. He never shouted. He never threatened. He would just stand in the doorway with his shoulders tight and his jaw set and talk about the pressure he was under, the employees counting on him, the jobs that would fall apart if the cash didn't come through. And I would stand there in my own doorway, the doorway I had framed myself in the house I had built with my own hands, and I would feel guilty for not helping faster. I was 68 years old, and I was letting a grown man make me feel guilty for protecting what I had spent a lifetime building. The number, when I finally sat down and added it up one Sunday afternoon, was $452,000. I wrote it on a yellow legal pad and stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my banking app and verified it against the transfer history. $452,000 over 5 years, transferred in amounts ranging from $8,000 to $45,000. Every one of them voluntary, every one of them undocumented, every one of them gone. I didn't feel anger when I looked at that number. I felt something quieter and colder, the particular exhaustion of a man who has finally admitted something to himself that he has known for a long time. I set the legal pad face down on the table and went out to water the garden. That was in early June of 2025. And in the weeks that followed, I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I made a plan. A good one. I booked a vacation house in Carmel, a 7-seat SUV and a coastal tour package, the whole Monterey trip that Daniel and his wife Vanessa had been talking about for 2 years. I paid for everything out of my own account under my own name, and I put a cashier's check for $100,000 in my briefcase tucked behind the travel documents. I was going to hand it to Daniel on the last night in Carmel. No conditions attached, no strings, just a father who still believed, despite everything, that his son might surprise him. The morning of June 21st, Daniel pulled up in front of my house at 7:15, right on time. He loaded my suitcase into the back, asked if I wanted to stop for coffee on the way, and smiled at me across the roof of the car, like everything between us was fine. I should have noticed the smile. I had spent 40 years reading structural diagrams, and I knew what it looked like when something was holding more weight than it was designed to carry. But I got in the car, and I didn't say anything about the briefcase. The drive to the airport took 40 minutes. Daniel kept the radio on a country station out of Tacoma that played songs about pickup trucks and heartbreak and open roads going somewhere better. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. He asked about the weather in Carmel. He said Vanessa was excited about the coastal tour. I watched the highway and thought about the legal pad in my desk drawer at home, the one with the number written on it. I hadn't always known the total. For the first couple of years, I kept telling myself the amounts were too small to track, which was the kind of reasoning a man uses when he doesn't want to know the answer to a question he's already started asking. The transfers were spread across enough time that each one felt like a separate decision, rather than part of a pattern. 8,000 here, 12,000 there, 14,000 on a Friday afternoon when Daniel's voice went tight on the phone, and I could hear Vanessa in the background asking him what I'd said. It was Robert who finally made me add it up. We were having coffee at his office one morning in late April. Robert keeps a drip machine on the credenza behind his desk, the old-fashioned kind that makes coffee strong enough to strip paint, and I mentioned as casually as I could manage that I'd transferred another $20,000 to Daniel the week before, to cover a materials invoice that had gone past due. Robert set his mug down on the desk. He looked at me the way he used to look at engineering drawings that had something wrong with them, not angry, just very still. "Walter," He said, "How much have you given him, total?" "I don't know exactly," I said, and even as the words came out, I knew how they sounded. "Yes, you do," Robert said. "You just haven't written it down yet." My jaw tightened. I told him it wasn't a loan. It was family support. There was a difference. There's a difference if both parties understand what it is, Robert said. "Does Daniel understand what it is?" I picked up my coffee mug and looked out his window at the parking lot below. 3 floors down, a guy in a hard hat was unloading lumber from a flatbed. I watched him work for a moment, efficient, practiced, not wasting a single motion. "He knows I help him when he needs it," I said. "That's not what I asked." I drove home that afternoon and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and 3 years of bank statements. It took me 2 hours. When the total appeared at the bottom of the column, $452,000, my chest felt like something had dropped onto it from a height. Not a sharp pain, a pressure. The kind that doesn't go away when you shift position. $452,000. In amounts that ranged from $8,000 to $45,000. Over 5 years. Every single one initiated by me. Every single one undocumented. I thought about Carol Ann. She had a particular way of looking at Daniel that I had never fully understood while she was alive, a kind of watchfulness that I used to mistake for worry. After she died, I decided it had been love. But sitting at that table with the laptop open in front of me, I started to wonder if it had been something else. If she had seen the pattern I was only now recognizing. She would have added it up years ago. The transfers hadn't started as a habit. The first one, $14,000 for a payroll gap in the spring of 2020, felt like exactly what it was. A father helping his son through a rough patch. Daniel called on a Friday evening, voice tight, said he had 3 employees who hadn't been paid and a client who was 30 days late on a $60,000 invoice. I told him to text me the account number and I'd move the money before end of business. "Thanks, Dad," he said, and I could hear the tension go out of his shoulders even over the phone. "I mean it. This is just temporary." "I know it is," I said. "Don't worry about it." That was the sentence I said most often in the 5 years that followed. Don't worry about it. As if the money had no weight. As if $452,000 was the kind of thing a man could hand out in paper bags at the door without noticing what it cost him. By the 3rd year, I had worked out the full architecture of what Daniel was doing, even if I wasn't ready to name it clearly. The amounts were always just specific enough to sound like a real invoice, $17,400, not a round number, because round numbers sound like guesses and specific numbers sound like facts. And the crises were always urgent, but never quite urgent enough to produce documentation. There was always a reason the invoice wasn't available yet, always a reason I couldn't speak directly to the subcontractor or the supplier. I was a structural engineer. I built my career on the ability to look at a load-bearing system and identify exactly where and how it would fail. And for 5 years, I had been watching my son's operation and choosing not to apply the same analysis. "You're not investing in his future," Robert had told me over the phone one evening after I described the pattern without giving him the total. "You're renting your own peace." I told him he was being uncharitable. "Walter," he said, and his voice had the particular flatness it got when he was about to say something he'd already decided I needed to hear. "When was the last time that boy called you on a Friday night and it wasn't about money?" I pressed my back teeth together hard enough to make my jaw ache. I told him I'd call him back. I didn't call back for a week, because the answer was that I couldn't remember. And I couldn't remember because it hadn't happened. Not once in 5 years had Daniel called on a Friday night just to ask how I was doing, just to say he'd been thinking about me, just to see if I needed anything. The calls came when the invoices came. The warmth came with the requests, and the silence, the long, empty stretches of weeks when I didn't hear from him at all, those came after I transferred the money. When the account was cleared and the pressure was off, and he didn't need anything from me for a little while, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after I closed the laptop. The number lived in the machine, now documented and permanent. $452,000. I picked up my phone and looked at Daniel's contact. The most recent message in the thread was from 7 months ago, a confirmation number for a transfer. Before that, another transfer. Before that, the request that preceded it. I put the phone face down on the table. Then I opened the laptop again and started planning a vacation, because I was 68 years old and I had not yet given up on my son. And I had this idea, a foolish, stubborn, deeply human idea, that 5 days on the California coast might be enough to remind both of us of something we had lost. I was wrong about that. But I didn't know it yet. In the morning, Daniel would pull into my driveway at 7:15, with the radio already playing and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And I would get into the car. And I would take the briefcase with the cashier's check inside it. And I would not yet know what that smile was carrying. 3 weeks before the airport, Daniel came to my house on a Tuesday afternoon without calling first. I was in the backyard pulling weeds along the fence line when I heard his truck in the driveway. By the time I got to the back door, he was already letting himself in through the side gate, still had the code, which I had not yet thought to change. He was wearing a pressed button-down shirt and carrying a manila folder thick enough to suggest he'd been planning this visit for a while. People who show up spontaneously don't bring organized paperwork. "Dad," he said with the particular brightness in his voice that I had learned to recognize as performance. "You got a few minutes?" "I've got all afternoon," I said. "What's in the folder?" He set it on the kitchen table and pulled out a chair without being asked. I washed my hands at the sink, dried them on the dish towel hanging from the oven handle, and sat down across from him. The folder sat between us like a third person at the table. "It's a loan package," Daniel said. $300,000. The lender is Pacific Northwest Commercial Lending. They do a lot of work with contractors in this region. The terms are solid, Dad. 18 months fixed rate. I looked at the folder without opening it. "What's it for?" "The equipment and expansion." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands, open, a posture I recognized from presentations, not from conversations. "A new fabrication setup and a second service vehicle. The business is at a point where we can take on bigger commercial contracts, but we need the capacity first. This is the bridge loan that gets us there." "Who's on the application?" I asked, though my stomach had already told me the answer. Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "It's a co-sign arrangement. The lender needs a secondary guarantor with established credit and documented assets. You'd be listed as the co-signer, not the borrower. Your liability would only activate if Hayes Construction defaulted." "Let me see the books," I said. He blinked. "The loan package has not the loan package, the company books. Profit and loss last 3 years. Accounts receivable aging report. Current liabilities." His throat moved as he swallowed. He pulled a second, thinner document from the folder and slid it across the table. His hand had a slight tremor in it that he was trying very hard to suppress. I spent 20 minutes reading. Daniel sat across from me with his hands folded on the table, but his right knee bounced steadily under the surface. I could see the fabric of his trousers twitching. The numbers in front of me told a story that had nothing to do with growth or expansion. Revenue had declined every quarter for 3 consecutive years. The accounts receivable aging report showed 4 invoices more than 90 days past due in contracting. That means clients who aren't going to pay. Current liabilities outpaced current assets by a ratio that in any commercial lending environment would trigger an automatic rejection. I set the documents down and pressed my palms flat on the table. "Daniel," I said, keeping my voice level, "this company has been losing money every quarter for 3 years." His knee stopped bouncing. His whole body went rigid. The market's been difficult. Material costs are up across the industry. Material costs don't explain 4 invoices that are 90-plus days out. That's a collection problem, not a cost problem. I tapped the accounts receivable page. And your current liabilities are running about 40% higher than your liquid assets. Any lender who looks at this without a guarantor is going to close the folder before they finish the first page, which is why they need my name on it. "You'd be protected," Daniel said, and his voice had taken on a pleading quality that made my chest hurt. "The equipment itself is collateral. If something went wrong," I said, "the lender would come after my retirement account before they tried to liquidate a depreciated excavator. That's how cosign liability works under Washington state law. I'd be the deeper pocket in the room, Daniel. That's the only reason they want me." His face flushed a deep, painful red. He pushed back from the table and stood up, and I could see his hands gripping the back of the chair hard enough to whiten his knuckles. "So you won't do it?" His voice cracked at the edges. "No," I said. "I won't. After everything." He stopped himself, jaw working, eyes bright with something that looked like fury, but felt to me like humiliation. "Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? Do you even care?" My heart twisted in my chest. I had raised this man. I had taught him to ride a bicycle in the driveway of this house, held the back of the seat until he told me to let go, then watched him wobble down the street on his own. Saying no to him felt like releasing that bicycle seat again, except this time I wasn't sure he was going to make it to the end of the block. "I care enormously," I said. "That's why I'm saying no. Co-signing a loan for a company that's already insolvent doesn't help you, Daniel. It just adds my retirement to the casualty list when it collapses. It's not going to collapse." He slammed his palm on the table hard enough to rattle the folder. "You've never believed in me. Not once in my entire life have you looked at something I built and said it was good enough." The words hit me like a fist to the sternum. My eyes burned, not quite tears, but close enough that I had to breathe carefully for a moment. Because he wasn't entirely wrong. I had been demanding. I had expected precision and accountability and clear-eyed planning from him, because those were the things I had been built from. And I had never fully reckoned with the cost of that expectation. But I had also over 5 years given him $452,000, and none of it had been enough to build something worth saving. "You can leave the folder," I said quietly. "I'm not going to change my answer, but you can leave it." Daniel grabbed the folder off the table, tucked it under his arm, and walked to the door without looking back at me. The screen door banged shut behind him. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after his truck backed out of the driveway. My hands were steady. That surprised me. My heart was not. I had said no. For the first time in 38 years, I had said no and held it. And sitting there in the afternoon quiet of the kitchen, Carol Ann and I had shared for decades, I had the uneasy feeling that Daniel was not the kind of man who accepted a no without finding another way to ask the question. After Daniel drove away, I did something that probably says everything about the kind of fool I was at 68 years old. I went inside, opened my laptop, and booked a 7-bedroom vacation house in Carmel by the sea. I told myself that 5 days on the California coast would give us space to breathe, to step back from the tension of the past few weeks, to remember that we were family before we were adversaries. But the honest truth I could only admit to myself late at night when the house was quiet, was simpler than any of that. I was still trying to buy my son back. The vacation package came to just under $18,000 when I added the 7-seat SUV rental and the coastal tour along the 17-mile drive. I paid it all in a single transaction, standing at the kitchen counter with my laptop and my reading glasses, and I felt a small, stubborn warmth in my chest when I clicked confirm. This was going to work. I was going to make it work. Then I went to my home safe and counted out enough for a cashier's check, $100,000. I had the check made out at my bank the following morning. I tucked it into the inside pocket of my travel briefcase behind the itinerary printouts and the rental confirmation, and I told myself I would hand it to Daniel on the last evening in Carmel. No strings attached, no conditions written down. Just a father who was willing to try one more time. The only condition was one I never said out loud 5 days without a single word about the loan. That was all I was asking. 5 days of being his father rather than his financial institution. 5 days of eating dinner without a manila folder on the table. If Daniel could give me that, if he could sit across from me at a restaurant in Carmel and talk about anything other than $300,000, I was prepared to hand him a check that would have cleared every outstanding liability on his books and left enough for a genuine fresh start. He never gave me the chance, but I didn't know that yet when I packed my suitcase on the evening of June 20th. I only learned what happened the night before we left much later from Emily. Emily is my granddaughter. She was 16 that summer, a quiet girl with her grandmother's serious eyes and a way of paying attention that most adults twice her age haven't figured out. She had been living with Daniel and Vanessa since she was born, and over the years, I had watched her learn to make herself small in rooms where her parents were arguing about money. She had her mother's talent for going still when the atmosphere in a house turned dangerous. She told me what she'd heard about 6 weeks after the airport, sitting at my kitchen table with a mug of hot chocolate. She'd barely touched her fingers, wrapped tight around the ceramic, like she needed something solid to hold on to. "Grandpa," she said, staring into the mug, "I need to tell you something I should have told you before the trip, and I'm sorry I didn't." My throat tightened immediately. "Go ahead, sweetheart." She took a shaky breath. "The night before you left, I was in my room, but my door was cracked. Mom and Dad were fighting in the hallway. Dad was really upset about the loan. He kept saying you'd humiliated him, that you'd looked at his books like he was some kind of... He said a word I won't repeat." Her jaw worked for a moment. And then he got quieter. The kind of quiet that's worse than yelling. My hands had gone very still on the table. He said, Emily continued, her voice dropping nearly to a whisper, "What if we cancel his ticket? After he clears security, he'll be stuck. He'll have to call us, and then he'll sign." She looked up at me, and her eyes were wet and furious, at the same time the eyes of someone who had been holding something painful for too long. "Mom asked if it would really work. And Dad said you always give in when you think we need you." The air went out of my lungs like I'd taken a punch to the chest. I had to press my hand flat on the table to keep from swaying forward. It was not Vanessa's idea. Every part of me had assumed in the weeks following the airport that she was the architect, that Daniel had been persuaded, or pressured, or slowly convinced. Because that version was easier. That version left room for my son to be weak rather than cruel. But Emily's voice, with its careful precision and its barely contained tears, was not describing a man who had been talked into something. She was describing a man who had proposed it himself in a hallway on the night before he drove his father to the airport with a smile on his face and the radio playing country music. "Emily," I said, and my voice came out rougher than I intended. "Why didn't you call me that night?" Her chin crumpled. The tears she'd been holding back spilled over, running fast down her face, and she pressed the back of her hand against her mouth to stop the sound that wanted to come out. Her shoulders shook with the effort. I was scared. She finally managed voice breaking completely. I thought if I called, and it made Dad angry, and then he'd take it out on, I didn't know what to do, Grandpa. I'm 16. I didn't know what to do. My heart broke clean in half for that girl. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Her fingers were ice cold, and I held on. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. You hear me? Not one thing. She nodded but kept crying, and I sat with her until the shaking stopped and the hot chocolate went completely cold. And I thought about the cashier's check still tucked in my briefcase, about the last good thing I had almost done for a man who had been planning the night before I handed it to him to leave me stranded in an airport. The morning of June 21st, Daniel had pulled into my driveway with the radio already playing. He had loaded my suitcase. He had asked if I wanted coffee on the way, and I had smiled back at him like a man who had no idea what was coming. Daniel dropped me at the south entrance of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport at 7:53 in the morning. I know the exact time because I checked my watch when I stepped out of the truck. A habit from 40 years of engineering work, where showing up late to a site meeting was the kind of thing people remembered about you. He popped the trunk, I pulled out my suitcase, and he gave me a wave through the windshield that was almost casual enough to be convincing. Almost. The truck pulled away before I had both hands on the handle. The south entrance was not the entrance I would have chosen. The main check-in hall for our airline was on the north side, a longer walk from where he'd dropped me. I assumed it was a parking consideration. I did not yet understand that a longer walk was the point. The check-in line moved quickly. I got to the counter at 8:11, handed my ID to the agent, a young woman with a neat bun and the particular patient expression of someone who has been explaining things to confused travelers since 6 in the morning, and watched her face change when she typed in my confirmation number. Mr. Hayes, she said carefully. I'm showing this reservation as canceled. My chest went tight. That's not possible. I have the confirmation email right here, she typed again. Her eyes moved across the screen in a way that told me she was not finding what I wanted her to find. The cancellation was processed online at 7:08 this morning. It was initiated by the primary account holder on the booking. 7:08. While Daniel was pulling out of my driveway, while I was loading my suitcase into the back of his truck and commenting on the weather. Can you check again? I asked, though my voice had already gone very quiet. She checked again. Her expression didn't change, but her voice gentled in the way people's voices do when they are delivering news they know is going to hurt. I'm sorry, sir. The cancellation is confirmed. There are seats available on a later flight if you'd like to rebook, but I'm not able to reinstate a canceled reservation. I thanked her. I stepped away from the counter. I called Daniel. 4 rings then, voicemail, his recorded voice, cheerful and professional, asking me to leave a message. I hung up without leaving one. I called Vanessa. 3 rings, voicemail. I put the phone in my jacket pocket and stood in the middle of the check-in hall with my suitcase handle in my hand and about 400 people moving around me in every direction. And I thought, so this is what it looks like. I found a row of plastic chairs near a window that looked out over the tarmac. Gate B7 was visible from where I sat. A jetway extended toward a plane that was not yet boarding. I set my suitcase beside me, straightened my jacket, and waited. The text came 4 minutes later. Daniel's name on the screen. I opened it. Dad, go find your own way home. Maybe this will teach you what it means to support your own family. I read it once. Then I read it again, slowly, the way I used to read structural calculations that had something in them I needed to be absolutely certain I understood before I signed my name to them. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for a moment. My jaw ached from how hard I was pressing my back teeth together. Then something happened inside my chest that I can only describe as a door closing. Not slamming, that would imply anger. Just a quiet, definitive click. The kind of sound a well-made lock makes when it catches. I typed back, "I see. Handle your own accommodations. Do you need me to teach you how adults pay for things?" I sent it. Then I turned my phone face down on my thigh and looked out at Gate B7 for a long moment. The jetway was still extended. A baggage cart moved slowly across the tarmac below. A seagull landed on a yellow-painted line and stood there in the thin morning light, completely indifferent to everything around it. I picked up my phone and opened the travel app. The Carmel rental house had a cancellation window until noon Pacific time. It was 8:26. I canceled it. The confirmation appeared on screen within seconds. Full refund 3 to 5 business days. The SUV rental had a 48-hour cancellation policy. I had booked it 10 weeks earlier, well within that window. Canceled. Full refund confirmed. The coastal tour package was non-refundable for cash, but it allowed credit transfers within the same booking platform. I transferred the full credit amount, $1,140, to my personal travel wallet. It took 6 minutes. I stood up, rolled my suitcase to a trash bin, and dropped the Carmel itinerary printouts inside. Then I sat back down and opened a new search tab. Hawaii, Ko-Olina Resort on the western coast of Oahu. Ocean View King Bed Private Lanai. 10 nights available starting today. The rate made me exhale slowly through my nose. It was not a modest rate. But I had just recovered $18,000 in refunds, and I was 68 years old, and I had not taken a vacation alone in longer than I could accurately remember. I completed the booking at 8:49. My flight to Honolulu departed at 11:15. Then Daniel called for the first time. I watched his name pulse on the screen 3 times and stopped. He called again immediately. I put the phone back in my pocket. I walked to the nearest airport cafe, ordered a large black coffee, and carried it back to my seat near the window. The plane at Gate B7 had begun boarding. Families with small children moved through the jetway in the particular organized chaos of early morning travel strollers, folded bags, shifted a toddler in a red jacket running ahead of his mother and laughing at the sound of his own footsteps on the floor. I watched them and felt something in my sternum that was not quite sadness and not quite relief. Something in between, the particular ache of a man who has just understood something clearly for the first time and is still deciding how he feels about what he now knows. Daniel called 4 more times before I finished my coffee. I watched his name appear and disappear on the screen with the same detached attention I used to give to weather reports on job sites. Relevant information noted no longer actionable. By the time I carried my cup to the trash and walked toward the international terminal, Daniel had called 11 times. I had not answered once. I had, however, confirmed a 10-night reservation at one of the finest resorts on the island of Oahu. And somewhere over the Pacific, my son and his wife were going to land in California and discover that the only thing waiting for them was a text message I had already sent. The flight to Honolulu boarded at 10:45. I found my seat window exit row enough legroom that my knees weren't jammed against the seat back, and I turned my phone to airplane mode without checking it first. Whatever messages had accumulated in the past 2 hours could wait until I decided I was ready to read them, which might be never, and that thought did not disturb me the way I expected it to. I ordered tomato juice when the flight attendant came by. I hadn't ordered tomato juice on a plane since the early 90s, when Carol Ann used to insist on it, because she said the altitude changed the way it tasted. I don't know if that's scientifically accurate. It tasted good. I drank it and looked out the window at the cloud cover over the Olympic Peninsula, and felt for the first time in longer than I could measure absolutely no obligation to be anywhere other than exactly where I was. Daniel and Vanessa's flight to San Francisco landed at approximately 2:15 Pacific time. I know this because I turned my phone back on somewhere over the ocean and found 17 missed calls and a voicemail that I made myself listen to from beginning to end. Daniel's voice in the voicemail was nothing like his voice in the truck that morning. The performance was completely gone. What was left was raw and ragged and furious in the way of someone who has just discovered that the plan they were so certain of has turned to wreckage in their hands. Dad, there's no house. There's no rental car. There's nothing. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to call me back right now. This is not funny. We're standing in the baggage claim at SFO and there is literally nothing. Call me back. Call me back right now. I listened to it twice. The second time I noticed the sound of Vanessa's voice in the background, higher than Daniel's, faster, the particular pitch of someone who is trying to keep their composure in a public place and failing. I could not make out her words, only the tone. It was not a pleasant tone. I did not call back. I opened my banking app instead, confirmed that the refunds from the Carmel house and the SUV rental were processing, noted that the credit transfer from the tour package had cleared to my travel wallet, and put the phone away. When the plane landed at Daniel K. Inouye International Airport in Honolulu, the late afternoon sun was hitting the terminal windows at an angle that turned everything gold. I collected my bag, found the resort shuttle, and rode with my suitcase between my knees and the trade winds coming through the cracked windows, smelling like salt and something flowering that I couldn't name. The Ko'olina resort was exactly what I had paid for, which is to say it was excessive in a way that felt entirely justified. The lobby had open-air walls that let in the ocean breeze, and the woman at the front desk smiled at me with the genuine warmth of someone who worked in a place they were not embarrassed to be working in. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "welcome. We have you in an Ocean View King. The lanai faces west, perfect for sunsets." "That'll do," I said. I called Robert from the lanai at 6 o'clock Hawaii time, which was 9 o'clock in Tacoma. He picked up on the second ring. "Walter," he said, "you're either calling to tell me something went very wrong or something went very right. You don't call at 9 on a weeknight otherwise." "I'm calling from a lanai in Honolulu," I said. "Daniel canceled my ticket at the airport this morning." A long pause. "He canceled your ticket?" While he was dropping me off. "The cancellation went through at 7:08. He dropped me at the south entrance so I'd have a longer walk to the counter. By the time I reached check-in, the seat was gone." Another pause. When Robert spoke again, his voice had the careful flatness of a man choosing his words with precision. "Walter, what did you do?" "I canceled everything I'd paid for and booked myself into a resort in Hawaii." I looked out at the water, which had gone a deep copper color in the setting sun. "He's in San Francisco with no house and no car. I imagine it's been an interesting afternoon." Robert made a sound that started as a cough and turned into a laugh he was clearly trying to suppress. "How's the room?" "Excellent," I said. "The lanai faces west." "Good Lord," Robert said, and now he wasn't suppressing the laugh at all. "Good for you, Walter. I mean it." "He left 17 messages," I said. I listened to one. "What did you do with the rest?" "Deleted them." I reached over and picked up the glass of water on the side table. My hand was completely steady, steadier than it had been in months. "Robert, you told me once I was renting my own piece. I think I just stopped paying rent." There was a pause on the line. When Robert answered, his voice had gone quieter, the laughter replaced by something more serious. "How do you feel?" I thought about that question for a moment. Genuinely thought about it, the way I would think about a structural question that deserved a real answer rather than a quick one. "Like I can breathe again," I said. I've been holding something very heavy for a long time. I didn't realize how heavy it was until I put it down. Don't pick it back up, Robert said. I don't intend to. We talked for another half hour about nothing in particular. A project his firm was bidding on, the summer tomato harvest from my garden, that I'd left in the care of my neighbor's teenage son, a documentary about bridge engineering that Robert had been meaning to watch and kept forgetting. Normal things. The kind of conversation I used to have before every phone call became an exercise in damage control. After I hung up, I sat on the lanai until the sun went all the way down, and the sky turned from copper to violet to a deep, clear black with more stars visible than I'd seen in years. The ocean made a constant low sound below, patient and indifferent to everything going on above it. Daniel called twice more that evening. I watched his name appear on the screen from across the table where I'd left the phone face up on purpose. I wanted to see it and choose not to answer rather than hiding it somewhere and pretending the choice wasn't being made. He called at 8:47, then again at 9:12. I watched both calls ring out. Then I went inside, got into the best bed I'd slept in since Carol Ann died, and was asleep before 10 o'clock, for the first time in longer than I could remember. In the morning, I woke up to the sound of the ocean and the smell of salt air coming through the lanai door I'd left cracked open. And for the first time in 5 years, my first thought when I opened my eyes was not about Daniel. 10 days in Hawaii taught me something I should have learned 30 years earlier. I am genuinely good company when nobody is asking me for anything. I walked the beach at Ko'olina every morning before breakfast. Not for exercise. I have never been the kind of man who walks for exercise and announces it to people, but because the water at that hour had a particular quality that I could not find anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. It was warm, not just the temperature, but the light on it, the way it moved. The waves at Ko'olina are gentle by Hawaiian standards, broken by a series of lagoons that filter out the bigger swells, and in the early morning, the surface was so smooth, it looked like hammered copper. I stood at the edge of it on the third morning and felt something release in my shoulders that I had not realized was clenched. I called Robert from the beach on day 4 because he had sent a text the evening before asking simply, "Still there? Still here?" I told him when he picked up. "I went snorkeling this morning." "You went snorkeling?" He said it the way a person repeats something they want to make sure they heard correctly. "There were sea turtles," I said. "Green sea turtles. 3 of them not 20 feet from shore. They are entirely unbothered by the world, Robert." I found that instructive. Robert laughed, a real laugh, not the careful social kind. Walter Hayes, 68 years old, learning life lessons from turtles. "Don't mock me," I said, but I was grinning so hard my cheeks hurt. I haven't grinned like this in 5 years. It feels strange on my face. Good strange or bad strange? Just strange, I said. Like wearing a coat I forgot I owned. Robert's voice went a shade more serious then. "Have you looked at his messages?" I had. On day 3, when I decided I was ready. Daniel had left 8 voicemails total, the first frantic, the middle ones oscillating between fury and bargaining, the last one landing somewhere that surprised me. His voice in that final message had lost every trace of the performance I was accustomed to. What remained was something younger, rawer, more confused than angry. Shot to the last voicemail said, "I don't understand why you're doing this. We're at a hotel near the airport. Mom is Vanessa's upset. I don't know what you want me to say. I thought you'd be angry for a day, and then we'd work it out. That's what always happens. That's what always just call me back, okay? Please. That's what always happens." I had listened to that sentence 4 times in a row, standing on my lanai with the ocean spread out below me. He said that's what always happens, I told Robert. He fully expected me to be temporarily upset and then return to normal. Normal being me paying for everything and not making it uncomfortable for anyone. And does that surprise you? Robert asked. My jaw tightened for a moment. No, I admitted. That's the part that doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is how clearly he said it, like it was simply a fact about the world. The sun rises in the east. Water flows downhill. Dad forgives and resumes paying. What are you going to do when you get home? Robert asked. I made a list, I said. A proper one, on hotel stationery. Of course you did. I could hear the warmth in his voice. What's on it? The locks first, I said. I found something on my security camera footage before I left for the trip that I need to deal with immediately. Then the equipment rental guarantee. Then I need to talk to you about the contractor relationships. A pause. What did you find on the camera? Charles, Daniel brought 2 men into my house 3 weeks ago while I was at a materials meeting in Olympia. One carried a laser measuring device. The other took photographs of every room, including the storage spaces in the basement. I kept my voice level, but my chest had gone tight again. Not with grief this time, but with a cold, focused anger that felt cleaner than grief. They were from a property valuation firm. I looked up the company. They specialize in estate asset assessment. The silence from Robert's end had a different quality than his usual thoughtful pauses. Walter. He was building a case, I said. For what exactly, I can only speculate. But a man who hires a valuation firm to photograph his father's house while his father is out of town is not a man who is planning to ask nicely. No, Robert said quietly. He is not. So the locks are first, I said again. Everything else follows from that. We talked for another 20 minutes. When I hung up, I sat on the beach for a long time watching the water and thinking about the list in my jacket pocket. 12 items written in my engineer's handwriting, precise, no flourishes, each one numbered. On day 8, Daniel stopped calling. The silence was not a relief. It felt more like a held breath, the particular stillness before a structure shifts. I had spent 40 years learning to read that kind of stillness, and I did not trust it. On the last evening, I sat on my lanai with a glass of iced tea and watched the sun go down over the Pacific. The sky did what Hawaiian skies do at that hour. It turned colors that have no names in any contractor's paint catalog, moving from gold to orange to a deep, aching pink that faded slowly into violet. A fishing boat moved across the horizon, unhurried, its running lights coming on one by one as the dark gathered. I thought about Carol Ann. She would have loved this view. She would have made me describe every color out loud, which I would have resisted and then done anyway, because she had a way of asking for things that made refusal feel like a waste of good time. I missed her with a sharpness that surprised me, considering how many years had passed. I should have brought you here, I said to the empty lanai. We had the time. We had the money. I kept saying next year, next year. The most expensive 2 words in the English language. I finished my iced tea. I packed my suitcase with the neat efficiency of a man who has been traveling alone for a long time. And I went to bed thinking about item number 1 on my list. Tomorrow I was going home. And the locks were changing before nightfall. I landed at Seattle-Tacoma at 2:17 on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky over Tacoma was the particular flat gray of early July in the Pacific Northwest. Not stormy, just overcast in the permanent non-committal way of a region that cannot quite commit to summer. After 10 days of Hawaiian sun, it felt like stepping into a waiting room. I drove home from the airport with my windows down and the radio off. The house looked exactly as I had left it. The garden needed water, the mail had piled up in the box by the road, and the Douglas firs along the back fence were doing what they always did, which was stand there looking permanent and unmoved by whatever was happening to the people below them. I had always appreciated that about Douglas firs. I carried my suitcase inside, set it in the hallway without unpacking it, and went directly to my desk in the study. The security system interface was a tablet mounted to the wall. I had installed the system 4 years ago, mostly because the neighborhood association had sent a letter about a string of garage break-ins, and Carol Ann had asked me to look into it. I opened the camera archive and typed in the date June 2nd, 3 weeks before the airport. The footage was clear. My system uses high-definition cameras at the front door, the side gate, and covering the backyard and basement entrance. At 11:46 in the morning on June 2nd, while I was at a materials sourcing meeting in Olympia, the side gate opened. Daniel came through first. Behind him were 2 men I did not recognize, one carrying a hard-sided case of the type used for precision measuring equipment, the other holding a professional camera with a wide-angle lens. They were inside my house for 43 minutes. I watched every minute of the basement footage twice. The man with the measuring device used a laser rangefinder to record dimensions in every room, the kind of systematic measurement done for property valuation, not for renovation planning. The man with the camera photographed built-in shelving, the mechanical room, the structural supports I had designed myself. He was thorough, he was professional, and he was standing in my basement with my son's permission while I was an hour and a half away and had no idea any of it was happening. I picked up the phone and called a locksmith company in Tacoma. Not the one I had used before, because Daniel had been present when I called them 3 years ago and might still have their number. A different company. A woman answered on the second ring. "I need all smart locks in a residential property replaced today," I said. 4 entry points. I need new hardware, new codes, and the old system completely deactivated. "We can have someone there by 4 o'clock, she said. "I'll be here," I said. The locksmith arrived at 3:58, a solid, efficient man named Gary, who shook my hand and got to work without asking unnecessary questions, which I appreciated. While he worked on the front door, I called the equipment rental company that had been providing machinery to Hayes Construction under my guarantee. The office manager answered. I had spoken with him twice before, both times to extend the guarantee period when Daniel's payments ran late. "This is Walter Hayes," I said. "I'm calling to formally terminate my personal guarantee on the Hayes Construction account, effective immediately. I'll need confirmation of termination in writing sent to my email address." A pause. "Mr. Hayes, there are currently 2 pieces of equipment out on that account. What that is a matter between your company and Hayes Construction," I said. "My guarantee is a separate agreement. Under the terms I signed, I'm entitled to terminate with 30 days written notice or immediately in the event of a material change in circumstances. I'm invoking the latter. Please send the termination confirmation today." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll need to speak with our contracts manager." "So that's fine," I said. "My email is on the account. I expect written confirmation by end of business." I hung up. Gary was finishing the second lock. The new hardware was matte black, different from the brushed nickel of the old system, which meant Daniel would notice the change before he even tried the handle. At 6:47 that evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner when the front doorbell rang. I checked the new camera feed on my phone. Daniel was standing on the front step in a gray jacket, his key in his hand. His face had the compressed expression of someone who is trying very hard to look calm and not quite managing it. He tried the key. It scraped against the new lock cylinder and went nowhere. He tried it again, jiggling the handle, his jaw going tight, with the effort of not reacting. Then he pressed the doorbell a second time, long and deliberate. I activated the intercom from my phone. "Daniel." His head snapped up toward the camera. "Dad, the key isn't working." "I know," I said. "I had the locks changed this afternoon." His nostrils flared. "Why?" "Because I found the footage from June 2nd, I said. "You brought two men into this house while I was in Olympia. One of them measured every room. The other photographed the structural supports in my basement." I kept my voice completely level. "A property valuation team, Daniel, in my home. Without my knowledge or permission." The color that rose in his face was not embarrassment. It was fury, the specific fury of someone who has been caught and is angry about being caught, rather than about what they did. His hand gripped the useless key so hard his knuckles went pale. "That was just I was exploring options," he said, his voice cracking at the edges. "In case you decided not to help with the loan. I needed to know what you needed to know what my assets were worth," I said. "So you could make a plan that didn't require my cooperation." "Dad, there is nothing inside this house that belongs to you," I said. "There never was." "Goodbye, Daniel." I closed the intercom. On the camera feed, I watched him stand on the front step for 22 minutes. His shoulders shook once, just once, and he pressed the back of his hand against his mouth, the way a man does when he is trying to hold something in that wants very badly to come out. Then he straightened his jacket, walked to his truck, and drove away without looking back at the house. I turned off the camera feed and finished making dinner. My hands were steady. My appetite, to my mild surprise, was excellent. But that night, lying in my own bed in the house I had built with my own hands, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Because watching my son stand on my front step with a useless key in his hand and his shoulders shaking, that had not felt like victory. It had felt like something closer to grief, wrapped in a practical necessity I could not afford to ignore. I had changed the locks because I had to. I did not change them because it was easy. Before I tell you what happened next, what one phone call and 3 names on a contract list did to everything Daniel had built. I need to know you're still with me. If you've ever watched someone take and take and take from a person who only ever gave, type "give" in the comments right now. Just that one word. Let me see how many of us have been on the same side of that table. I'll be waiting. And a quick note before we continue: the story ahead contains some fictional elements woven in to bring the truth of the experience to life. If that's not for you, no hard feelings, this is your moment to step away. But if you're saying, I think what comes next will stay with you for a long time. The morning after I changed the locks, I slept until 7:30, which for a man who spent 40 years showing up to job sites before the sun was fully up, might as well be noon. I made coffee, ate 2 eggs over easy, and sat at the kitchen table reading the newspaper, the way I used to before Daniel's Friday calls started eating through my mornings. Then I drove to Robert's office. He had moved his firm to a building near the waterfront 3 years ago, one of those renovated industrial spaces with exposed brick and high ceilings that architects love and structural engineers assess with professional suspicion. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, told the receptionist my name, and was waved through before she finished dialing. Robert was standing at his window when I came in, coffee in hand, looking out at the waterway below. He turned when he heard me, took one look at my face, and pointed at the chair across from his desk. "Sit down," he said. "You look like a man who's been up since 4, pretending he slept." "I slept fine," I said, which was mostly true. "I need to tell you something, and then I need to ask you something." "Tell me first." I sat down and laid it out plainly. The camera footage from June 2nd, the valuation team Daniel had brought through the house. the systematic measurement and photography of every room, including the basement. I told it the way I would present findings at a site review chronologically, without editorializing, letting the facts carry their own weight. Robert stood at his window the entire time I spoke, and his expression moved from attentive to tight-jawed to something harder that I did not have a precise word for. When I finished, he set his coffee mug down on the windowsill with a care that suggested he was controlling the force of the motion deliberately. He was building a competency case, Robert said. His voice had gone very flat. That's what the valuation was for. If he could establish that you were making unsound financial decisions, refusing a reasonable loan, giving away money inconsistently, he could use the asset valuation as part of a petition to question your capacity to manage your own estate. My stomach dropped about 3 inches. I had suspected something along those lines, but had not yet put it into those specific words, and hearing them spoken out loud by a man as measured as Robert made them considerably more real. Can he do that? I asked. He would need a physician's assessment, and probably a second opinion, Robert said, turning from the window to face me directly. And he would need to demonstrate a pattern of impaired judgment, which is why he's been telling people you're losing your mind. He pressed his lips together. Walter, that rumor has been going around for longer than you know. I heard something 6 weeks ago from a colleague whose firm did some work with Hayes Construction. I didn't say anything because I thought it was idle gossip. I should have called you. The anger that moved through my chest then was the clean structural kind, not the hot mess of personal betrayal, but the cold precision of a man who has just identified exactly where a load-bearing wall has been compromised. That's the second thing I need to ask you about, I said. The contractor relationships. Robert nodded, already knowing where this was going. He had known me for 20 years. I need you to know formally and clearly that I have no ongoing association with Hayes Construction, I said. No guarantees, no referrals, no involvement of any kind. If anyone calls your office asking about my relationship with that company, I want them to hear that directly from you. Robert held my gaze for a long moment. His jaw was set, his eyes steady, the face of a man making a decision he has already made and is simply confirming. I'll make 3 calls this afternoon, he said. Hargrove Brothers, Pacific Rim Contracting, and the Bellingham Municipal Account. Those are the 3 active relationships Hayes Construction has that came through my introduction. I'll inform each of them that your association with the company has ended. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Not with grief, with gratitude, which is a different kind of tightening and considerably more difficult to sit with gracefully. Robert, I said. Don't thank me, he said, waving one hand with the impatience of a man who finds sentiment inefficient. It's the accurate thing to say. Those relationships exist because of your reputation, not Daniel's. Correcting the record isn't a favor. It's just correct. He made the calls that same afternoon. I know because Hargrove Brothers called my personal cell at 4:42. Marcus Hargrove himself, a third-generation contractor whose grandfather had worked on 2 of my early bridge projects. His voice was careful, professional, but underneath it I could hear something that sounded like concern. Walter, he said. Robert called me earlier. I just want you to know, whatever's happening with Daniel's company, it doesn't change anything on my end. You have a lot of friends in this industry who have a long memory. My eyes burned unexpectedly. I pressed 2 fingers against my sternum and breathed for a moment before I trusted my voice. I appreciate that, Marcus, I said. More than you know. Is there anything we can do? No, I said. But thank you for asking. Within the week, Robert confirmed that all 3 contractors had suspended their active engagements with Hayes Construction pending review. Hargrove brothers cited payment irregularities they had noticed independently. Pacific Rim Contracting discovered an unresolved lien on a job site that Hayes Construction had not disclosed. The Bellingham municipal account simply did not renew. None of it required my direct involvement. None of it was anything I had orchestrated beyond a single conversation in Robert's office on a Wednesday morning. The name Walter Hayes had been holding Hayes Construction upright for years, and when I withdrew it, the company's actual weight became visible all at once. Robert called me Friday evening just before 6. "It's done," he said. I made 3 calls. That's all it took. I was standing in my garden when he called, pulling the last of the early summer weeds from the bed along the fence. My knees ached from crouching, and the evening air smelled like soil and something green. "3 calls," I said. "3 calls?" He confirmed. "Walter, your son has been living on borrowed credibility for years. You just stopped lending it." I pulled a stubborn weed out by the root and looked at it for a moment, the whole thing soil still clinging to the base, the part that had been underground all this time doing the damage. "He's going to escalate," I said. "Yes," Robert said. "He is. The question is where." I dropped the weed in the bucket beside me and straightened up slowly, one hand on my lower back. My knees complained loudly, and I told them to be patient. "I'll find out soon enough," I said. The call came on a Thursday evening in mid-July from a man named Gerald Whitman, a retired civil engineer I had known since the early 90s when we had served on the same municipal review board for 3 years running. Gerald was the kind of man who said exactly what he meant and expected the same in return, which made him easy to trust and occasionally difficult to spend an entire afternoon with. "Walter," he said after we had exchanged the usual pleasantries about retirement and knee replacements and the inexplicable persistence of gophers in Pacific Northwest gardens, "I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to know I'm asking because I consider you a friend." My hand tightened on the phone. "Go ahead, Gerald. I had lunch with a fellow last week, works in commercial lending, knows your son through a mutual contact. He mentioned, and I'm quoting here, that he'd heard you'd been having some difficulty keeping track of things lately, forgetting appointments, making financial decisions that seemed out of character." A pause. He said Daniel had mentioned it to a few people, that he was concerned. The silence that followed was not comfortable. I let it sit for exactly 3 seconds before I answered, because I needed those 3 seconds to make sure what came out of my mouth was precise rather than emotional. "Gerald," I said, "I want to ask you something in return. In 30-some years of knowing me, have you ever seen me forget an appointment, lose track of a financial decision, or make a choice that seemed impaired?" Gerald's answer was immediate and unequivocal. "No, not once." "Then I'd like you to consider the source of that information," I said. "And I'd like you to consider the timing. Daniel asked me to co-sign a $300,000 loan for a company that has been insolvent for 18 months. I declined. 2 weeks later, he left me stranded at Seattle-Tacoma Airport as punishment. The rumor started before the airport, Gerald. He planted it in advance." A long breath from Gerald's end. "Good Lord. It is a preparation," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my jaw was clenching hard enough to make my temples ache. "If enough people believe I'm not competent, it becomes easier to challenge decisions I make about my own estate. It's not a kind interpretation of my son's behavior, but it is the accurate one." "Walter." Gerald's voice had gone rough with something that sounded like anger on my behalf. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing right now," I said. "But if someone asks you about my mental state, I'd appreciate an honest account of what you've observed over 3 decades. "You'll have it," Gerald said, without hesitation. After I hung up, I sat in the study for a long time. The evening light was coming through the window at a low angle, striping the floor in gold and shadow. My hands, which had been rock steady throughout the call, were trembling slightly now that there was no one to be steady for fine tremors in the fingertips, the kind that come not from weakness, but from controlled fury held too long in a closed fist. I opened my laptop. The banking software loaded slowly the way it always did in the evening when the system was running updates. I navigated to the transfer history and looked at the records I had already compiled once the $452,000, every date, every amount, every notation I had made at the time of each transfer. Then I opened a new document and began adding to it, not just the transfers, everything. Dates of phone calls, summaries of conversations. The June 2nd camera footage, I exported the timestamp and file reference. The equipment rental termination notice. Robert's confirmation emails from the 3 contractor calls. The voicemails from Daniel's SFO panic. I transcribed the relevant portions word for word with timestamps. I worked for 2 hours. When I finished, the document was 11 pages long and organized with the same structure I used for engineering site reports, chronological referenced, no editorializing. I saved 2 copies to separate cloud accounts and emailed a third to Robert with a single line, "For your records in case it becomes relevant." Robert replied within 4 minutes. "Already keeping my own file. Yours is more thorough, unsurprising." I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. The anger had settled into something colder and more useful, the particular focus that comes when a man stops reacting to a problem and starts solving it. Daniel had been building his case for months. I had spent 2 hours building mine. His was based on rumor and selective memory. Mine had timestamps. The following week, 2 more calls came, distant cousins, both on my mother's side, both asking variations of the same question, wrapped in different amounts of social padding. One asked if I was doing all right, given everything going on. The other mentioned that Daniel had seemed very worried about me at a family gathering I had not attended. Both calls had the careful, tentative quality of people who have been told something unsettling and want to verify it without admitting they were told. I answered both calls the same way. I thanked them for checking in, told them I was in excellent health, and mentioned that I had recently completed a 10-day vacation in Hawaii and was currently tending a very productive vegetable garden. If they wanted evidence of diminished capacity, they were welcome to watch me weed. One cousin laughed. The other seemed uncertain whether laughing was appropriate, which told me everything I needed to know about what she had been told. I reported both calls to Robert, who added them to his own file. "He's working the family network systematically," Robert said when I called him Thursday afternoon. "He started with the professional contacts, the valuation team, the financial lender. When that didn't move you, he moved to social pressure. Family members who ask you concerned questions are easier to produce as witnesses than business contacts." "Witnesses to what?" I asked, though the cold thing in my chest already knew. "To a pattern," Robert said. "Walter, if this ever went before a court, and I'm not saying it will, the argument would be that multiple people over an extended period noticed behavior consistent with cognitive decline. He's manufacturing the multiple people." My throat worked for a moment. I breathed through it. "Then I'll manufacture a counter-record," I said. "Dated, documented, and considerably better organized than anything Daniel has ever produced in his life." Robert made a sound that was half laugh, half something grimmer. "That I believe entirely." I hung up the phone and went back to the garden. The tomatoes needed staking. 3 of them had grown past the cages I'd put up in June and were starting to lean under their own weight. I spent an hour out there in the late afternoon sun, tying stems to bamboo poles with careful half-hitches, and I thought about the document sitting in 3 separate cloud accounts with timestamps going back 5 years. Let him come with his rumors. I had 40 years of precision work behind me. I knew how to build something that would hold. Robert called me on a Tuesday morning in early August, and I could tell from the first word he said that he was working hard to keep the amusement out of his voice. "Walter," he said, "I need to tell you something that happened yesterday afternoon at the Pacific Northwest Engineers Association. I want you to hear it from me before you hear it from anyone else, and I want you to know that it ended exactly the way you would want it to end." I set down the mug I was holding. "Tell me." "Daniel came to the building," Robert said. "He asked at the front desk to speak with the executive committee. He was shown into the reception room. Harold Breckenridge was there, you remember. Harold runs the committee, now been a member since '87, along with 2 other senior members. Daniel sat down and presented himself as a concerned family member." "Go on," I said, though my jaw had already tightened. "He told them you had been showing signs of cognitive decline," Robert said. "Forgetting important commitments, making erratic financial decisions, becoming increasingly isolated. He said he was worried about your ability to manage your own affairs, and was hoping the association might have seen something concerning, or might be willing to submit a statement supporting a formal review of your capacity." The fury that rolled through my chest was so cold, it almost felt like ice water. I pressed my free hand flat on the kitchen counter and breathed slowly through my nose. "What did Harold say?" I asked. Robert's voice warmed with something close to satisfaction. "Harold let him finish. Completely. Didn't interrupt once. And then Harold put his pen down on the table, looked at Daniel and said, and I'm quoting because Harold told me the exact words, 'Young man, I have known Walter Hayes since before you were born. He designed the load distribution system for the Morrison Creek overpass in 1991. That bridge has carried 30 years of Pacific Northwest winters without a single structural complaint. If his mind were failing, it would be the last thing any of us would need to be told by his son." My throat closed so abruptly I had to swallow twice before I could speak. My eyes burned, and I pressed the back of my wrist against them for a moment. Not crying, not quite, but close enough that I needed a second to collect myself. "Then what?" I managed. Then Harold nodded to the building's security coordinator fellow named Patrick, very efficient, and Daniel was escorted to the elevator. He tried to say something else on the way out. Patrick told him the exit was to his left. A sound came out of me that I had not planned, something between a laugh and a sharp exhale, the kind of involuntary release that happens when tension that has been building for weeks finds a sudden exit point. My hand was shaking slightly against the counter, and I gripped the edge to steady it. "Robert," I said, "how do you know all of this in such detail?" "Because Harold called me last night." Robert said, furious in the way that only a 73-year-old civil engineer with 40 years of professional pride can be furious. His exact words were, "Robert, that boy came into my building and tried to use my association to help him steal from his own father. I want Walter to know that every man in that room would testify on his behalf without being asked twice." This time I could not stop what happened to my eyes. I turned away from the window so I was facing the wall, and I pressed my lips together hard and breathed through my nose and waited for the burning behind my eyes to pass. It took longer than I would have liked. "Are you all right?" Robert asked quietly. "Give me a moment," I said. He gave me the moment without comment, which is one of the reasons I have valued Robert's friendship for 20 years. When I had steadied myself, I said, "I owe Harold a phone call." He's expecting one, Robert said. He also said, and I thought you should know this, that 3 other members of the committee have reached out to him since yesterday, asking what they can do. Walter, you have been building something in this industry for 40 years. Daniel walked into a room full of it and did not understand what he was standing in. That sentence sat with me for the rest of the morning. I called Harold at 11 o'clock. He picked up on the first ring, and his voice gruff, direct, the voice of a man who has run technical committees for 3 decades, cracked slightly at the edges when he heard mine. "Walter," he said, and the single word carried everything he didn't say after it. "Harold," I said. "I heard what happened. I don't have the right words." "You don't need words," Harold said, his voice firming up again with the particular dignity of a man who finds sentimentality uncomfortable, but will not pretend it isn't there. "I need you to know that what that young man tried to do in my building using my association, our colleagues, men who respect you, that is not something any of us will forget or forgive easily. And if anything formal ever comes of this, you have a room full of people who will say exactly what they know." My chest ached with something that was not entirely grief and not entirely gratitude, but lived somewhere in the complicated territory between the two. "Thank you," I said. "That's all I have." "It's enough," Harold said. After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The house was very quiet around me, the good kind of quiet, the kind that feels inhabited rather than empty. Through the window, the Douglas firs moved slightly in the late morning breeze, steady and unbothered the way they always were. Daniel had walked into the Pacific Northwest Engineers Association with a manila envelope and a rehearsed story about a failing old man. He had walked out escorted by a security coordinator, while 40 years of my professional life sat in that room and watched him go. I had not been there. I had not needed to be. That was the part he had never understood. Not about the money, not about the house, and not about this. My name did not derive its weight from my presence in a room. It had been built over decades by precision, by honesty, by work that held up when tested by Pacific Northwest winters. Daniel had tried to dismantle it with gossip. He had brought a rumor to a room full of engineers. Engineers do not work with rumors. They work with load-bearing facts. He was going to need a different strategy. And from the cold, patient place at the center of my chest, I was already wondering what it would be. The call came on a Wednesday evening, 8:13 by the clock on the microwave. I was at the kitchen counter slicing tomatoes from the garden, the first good ones of the season, heavy and dark red, still warm from the afternoon sun. Emily's name appeared on my phone screen, and I wiped my hands on the dish towel and answered before the second ring. "Grandpa." Her voice was careful. Too careful, the careful of someone who has rehearsed what they're about to say and is now discovering that the rehearsal doesn't fit their mouth properly. "Emily," I said. "How are you, sweetheart?" "I'm fine." A pause that was half a beat too long. "Grandpa, I was calling because Dad mentioned that my fall semester tuition payment is coming up, and he said you usually handle that, and he thought maybe you could. He said you might be able to transfer it directly to Emily," I said gently. She stopped. "Did your father ask you to make this call?" The pause this time was longer and had a different texture, the texture of a 16-year-old trying to decide whether the truth was more dangerous than the script. "Yes," she said, finally her voice dropping to nearly a whisper. "He said you'd be more likely to do it if I asked. He said grandparents can't say no to their grandkids." A sharp intake of breath, almost a gasp. "Grandpa, I didn't want to call about the money. I really didn't. I didn't know how to say no to him, and Her voice broke completely on the last word. The sob that followed, was the kind that a young person makes when they have been holding something in for too long, and the release of it surprises even them, a full-body sound, wrenched up from somewhere deep, followed by the stuttering attempt to pull it back under control. My chest caved in with something so tender and so furious at the same moment that I had to grip the counter's edge to keep from swaying. "Emily," I said, making my voice as steady as I could. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. You hear me, not one thing." "I should have told you," she started, voice still fractured with crying. "You're 16 years old," I said. "He put you in an impossible position on purpose. That is not your failure. That is his," a long, shuddering breath from her end. The crying was slowing down, but hadn't stopped. I could hear her pressing her hand against her mouth, the way she used to do when she was small, and hurt herself and didn't want to make too much noise about it. "Grandpa," she said when she could speak again, "are you okay with everything that's happening? I've been so worried about you." My throat tightened so sharply it ached. This 16-year-old girl, used as a phone script by her own father, was asking if I was okay. I pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of my nose and breathed carefully. "I'm better than I've been in years," I told her honestly. "But I want to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Are you all right where you are at home?" A hesitation. "It's been really tense," she said. "They argue a lot. About money. About you. Mom gets really quiet when Dad talks about his plans, and I just stay in my room mostly. Would you like to come stay with me for a while?" The silence that followed lasted exactly 2 seconds. Then Emily made a sound that was half laugh and half the kind of relieved crying that happens when someone offers exactly the thing you needed and were afraid to ask for. "Can I?" she asked, voice wobbling. Is that really okay?" "I put fresh sheets on the guest bed this morning," I said. "I had a feeling I might be asking you this." The following morning, I drove to Cascade Valley College before 9 o'clock. The financial services office was on the ground floor of the administration building, a small room with institutional carpeting and a window that looked out at a parking lot, staffed by a woman named Patricia, who had the organized patience of someone who has handled every variety of anxious student and parent the Pacific Northwest could produce. "I'd like to make a direct payment on a student account," I said. "Full academic year, Emily Hayes." Patricia typed the name, confirmed the student ID, and looked up. "And the payment method?" "Cashier's check," I said. I placed it on the counter, the full annual amount drawn from my personal account that morning. "I'd also like to add a notation to the account." Patricia raised her eyebrows slightly. "What kind of notation?" "Then that all future tuition payments for this student are to be accepted only from Walter Hayes directly in person by cashier's check or wire transfer from my personal account, and not from any third party acting on my behalf or on behalf of the student." I kept my voice pleasant. "I want it noted that no other party has authorization to modify the payment arrangement or redirect funds." Patricia looked at me for a moment, then back at the check, then typed several lines into the system. "That's an unusual request," she said, "but it's within our policy for designated payer accounts. I'll flag it accordingly." "Thank you," I said. I called Emily from the parking lot. She picked up on the first ring. I could hear the tension in her breathing even before she spoke. "Your tuition is paid," I said. "Full year, directly to the school. No one can touch it or redirect it or use it as a reason to call you again." A sound came through the phone that I will not forget. It started as a breath and became something larger, not quite a sob, but the sound of a young person's shoulders coming down from a height they had been held at for too long. Her voice when it came was small and cracked and completely genuine. Grandpa, she whispered. Thank you. You don't need to thank me, I said. Pack a bag when you're ready. There's no rush. 3 days later, Emily arrived at my front door with a single duffel bag and a small bedside lamp she had carried on her lap in the ride share because she didn't want it to get broken. She stood on my front step looking at me with Carol Ann's serious eyes, and her chin was trembling with the effort of not crying again, and I thought, whatever this cost, whatever comes next, she was worth every single decision I have made since that morning at the airport. Come in, I said. I made dinner. She walked through the door, and the house, which had been quiet for 5 years, felt different in a way I had not anticipated and could not accurately name. Fuller, perhaps. Or simply less like waiting. Emily ate dinner that first night like someone who had not sat at a quiet table in a long time. She didn't say much, just worked through the roasted chicken and the garden tomatoes and the cornbread I had made from a recipe of Carol Ann's that I had not made in 3 years because it felt wasteful to make a full pan for one person. Emily ate 2 pieces without being asked if she wanted more, and the sight of it did something complicated to the area behind my sternum that I chose not to examine too closely. After dinner, she helped me with the dishes without being asked. She washed, I dried, and we talked about small things. The garden, her fall semester schedule, whether the Douglas firs in the backyard had always been that tall, or if she remembered them smaller when she was little. She said she remembered climbing one when she was about 9 and getting stuck 12 feet up and being too embarrassed to call for help. What did you do? I asked. Waited until you came outside to check on the garden, she said, grinning in a way that lit up her whole face. Carol Ann's grin, I thought, the same particular brightness around the eyes. And then I pretended I was up there on purpose. I remember that, I said, though I had not until that exact moment. You told me you were conducting an aerial survey. She laughed a real laugh, unguarded, the kind that young people produce when they have temporarily forgotten to be careful. My chest ached with how much it sounded like something this house used to contain and had been missing. Those first 2 weeks settled into a rhythm that surprised me with how natural it felt. Emily left for campus early and came home in the late afternoon. She studied at the kitchen table, which Carol Ann had always done too, spreading papers across the full surface with a systematic disorder that resolved itself into something coherent by evening. She made coffee in the mornings without asking if I wanted any, just set a mug on the counter near where I stood reading the paper. Small things. The kind of things that make a house feel inhabited rather than occupied. She told me more about what it had been like at home over the past months, not all at once, but in pieces, over dinners and morning coffee, and one evening when we were both in the living room reading, and she looked up from her book and simply started talking. The arguments between Daniel and Vanessa had escalated after the airport. Vanessa had grown colder, more precise in her anger, the kind of anger that has calculations behind it, rather than heat. Daniel had become louder and more desperate, swinging between grandiose plans to pressure Walter into compliance and dark moods when none of them worked. He kept saying, "You'd come around." Emily said, her fingers wrapped tight around her mug. "Even after the airport. Even after you changed the locks. He kept telling Mom and me that you always forgave eventually. That was just how you were." My jaw tightened. "And your mother?" I asked. "What did she say?" Emily's expression shifted. Something complicated moved through it, part pity and part something harder. "She stopped arguing back," she said. "She just started getting very quiet and very organized, like she was sorting things out in her head." Her voice dropped. "Grandpa, I don't think Mom believed he was right anymore. I think she was doing the math." I thought about that for a long time after Emily went to bed. On the 4th of September, a Thursday overcast, in the way that early September in Tacoma often is, the summer warmth, retreating in degrees rather than all at once. I drove to the office of my estate attorney, a methodical woman named Claire Hartwell, who had handled my affairs since I drew up my first will after Carol Ann's diagnosis. Claire's office smelled like coffee and old paper, which I had always found reassuring in an attorney. She shook my hand, poured 2 mugs without asking, and sat across from me with a yellow legal pad and a pen she had clearly been using for years. "Walk me through what you want to change," she said. "Everything that currently names Daniel as primary beneficiary," I said. "The house, the investment accounts, the retirement portfolio. I want all of it redirected to a testamentary trust for Emily. She receives full access at 25. Until then, the trust covers her education, housing, and reasonable living expenses administered by a trustee of my choosing." Claire wrote without pausing. "Trustee Robert Callahan," I said. "He's already agreed. And Daniel," Claire asked, her pen hovering. "Daniel receives nothing from the estate," I said. "Not a conditional amount, not a deferred share, not a sentimental item listed by name. Nothing." Claire looked up from her pad. Her expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes were doing something more careful, the look of an attorney taking the measure of a client, to confirm the decision is considered rather than reactive. "Walter," she said, "I want to ask you directly, because it's my job to ask. Is this decision being made under any kind of pressure, duress, or impairment?" My mouth curved slightly. "Claire, you have known me for 19 years. Have I ever struck you as a man who makes decisions under pressure?" The corner of her mouth moved. "No. You once spent 45 minutes explaining to me why the clause I recommended was structurally unsound before you'd sign it. This decision has been building for 5 years," I said. "The airport was simply the point at which it became impossible to pretend otherwise." She nodded and wrote for several minutes without speaking. When she looked up, she had 3 pages covered in precise, dense notes. "I'll have a draft to you by Monday," she said. "Review it with the same attention you'd give a load-bearing wall." "I always do," I said. I drove home in the early afternoon. Emily was at the kitchen table when I came in, surrounded by textbooks and a half-eaten apple, reading something with the focused intensity of a person who genuinely wants to understand what they're reading rather than simply finish it. She looked up when I came through the door. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Good," I said. I hung up my jacket and went to put the kettle on. "How's the studying? Cellular biology is trying to kill me," she said, dropping her chin into her hand with theatrical despair. "I think the mitochondria are winning." "The mitochondria always win," I said. "Do you want tea? Please," she said, and bent her head back over her textbook. I stood at the stove waiting for the kettle and looked at the back of her head, the dark hair, the focused posture, the apple core on the edge of the table, and thought about the document Claire Hartwell was drafting in her office across town, about what it meant to build something and choose carefully who you leave it to. Emily did not know what I had done that afternoon. I did not tell her. Some things do not need to be said to be true. Daniel called on a Monday morning with what he described as an invitation. "Dad," he said, his voice carrying the particular brightness of someone who has rehearsed a tone rather than felt it. "I think it's time we all sat down together. As a family. I've booked a private room at Harborview Grill Sunday the 14th. Just the family. Dinner. A chance to talk things through properly." I held the phone and looked out the kitchen window at the garden where Emily was pulling the last of the summer tomatoes off the vines before the first frost came for them. "Who's coming?" I asked. Vanessa and me, he said. Aunt Patrice and Uncle Norm, Cousin Shelley. And Vanessa's mother is in town, so she'll be there too. I noted the last item without reacting to it. Vanessa's mother. A woman I had met perhaps 4 times in 8 years. Her presence at what Daniel was calling a family dinner was not an accident. I'll be there, I said. Daniel's exhale was audible relief he had not managed to conceal. Good. 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address. I know where Harborview Grill is, Daniel, I said. I called Robert after I hung up and told him what had been arranged. It's a pressure formation, Robert said without a moment's hesitation. He's assembling people who will present financial needs simultaneously. Multiple emergencies at once in a public setting where refusing looks cruel. He's counting on the social weight of the room. I know, I said. I'm going anyway. A pause. What are you bringing? A tablet, I said. And everything on it. Robert made the sound he makes when he approves of something, but won't say so directly. Call me after. The 14th was a cool Sunday evening, the kind of September night in Tacoma that smells like wood smoke and coming rain. Harborview Grill sat on the waterfront with its lights reflected in the dark water below, the kind of restaurant that people chose when they wanted the setting to do emotional work for them. I arrived at 6:55, parking my own car, taking my time walking to the entrance. The private room was off the main dining area. A long table set for 8 wall sconces, throwing warm, amber light across white linen. Daniel and Vanessa were already seated. Patrice and Norm, Cousin Shelley. And at the far end of the table, a woman I recognized as Vanessa's mother, Carol Whitfield, somewhere in her mid-60s with Vanessa's dark eyes and a posture that suggested she was not entirely comfortable with where she was sitting. She watched me come in with an expression I could not immediately read. Daniel stood when I entered, arms slightly open in the gesture of a man staging reconciliation. Dad, he said warmly. I'm glad you came. I shook his hand, nodded to the others, and took the empty seat at the center of one side of the table, not at either end, not in a corner. In the middle, where I could see every face, dinner was served. The conversation in the first half hour was careful and social, the weather, Shelley's new position at a hospital in Portland, how the Mariners had performed. Daniel was charming, attentive, refilling water glasses, laughing at the right moments. He was very good at the performance when the stakes were high enough to motivate it. Then, over the main course, he shifted. I think we all know why we're really here, he said, setting his fork down with the practiced gravity of a man who has rehearsed this sentence. Things have been difficult. For everyone. And I think as a family, we owe it to each other to be honest about where things stand. Patrice nodded. Norm cleared his throat. Shelley looked between Daniel and me with the wide, careful eyes of someone who has been told one version of a story and is beginning to suspect there may be another. Daniel talked about the business, the hardship, the employees who were struggling. He talked about the strain on his marriage, on his household. His voice thickened at the edges, not quite tears, but close enough to perform the suggestion of them. Vanessa added details about monthly costs, about the pressure they were under, her voice precise and controlled, in the way of a woman who has converted emotion entirely into data. I let them finish. Every word. I sat with my hands loose in my lap and my face attentive, and I let the full performance reach its conclusion before I moved. Then I reached into the bag I had carried in and placed the tablet on the table. Before we discuss anyone's current financial situation, I said, keeping my voice completely even, I want to make sure everyone at this table is working from accurate information. I opened the document. The transfer history filled the screen, 10 years, every transaction, every date, every amount. $452,000 organized with the precision of an engineering site report. Daniel has suggested to various people over the past several months that I have contributed little to this family while he has carried the weight. I turned the tablet so the table could see it clearly. These are my bank records. Every voluntary transfer I made to Hayes Construction and to Daniel personally over a period of 10 years. The total is $452,000. The room went very still in the way rooms do when information lands that changes the shape of everything people thought they understood. Patrice made a sound, a sharp, involuntary intake of breath. Norm leaned forward to look at the screen, squinting his expression, shifting from polite neutrality to something considerably more alert. Shelley pressed her fingers to her lips. Vanessa's face did not move, but her hands, which had been resting on the tablecloth, curled slowly inward until her knuckles whitened against the white linen. Daniel's jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle working at the hinge of it. His eyes moved from the screen to my face and back, and in them I saw the specific fury of a man whose narrative has just been publicly dismantled before an audience he assembled himself. "This is not a bill," I said. "I am not asking for repayment. I am showing you this because Daniel has described a version of this family's history that does not match the record. The record is on the screen. Anyone at this table is welcomed to examine it." Daniel's voice when it came was tight with controlled fury. "You brought a spreadsheet to a family dinner." "You brought an audience," I said. "I brought evidence." Carol Whitfield at the far end of the table put her wine glass down very carefully. Her dark eyes moved from the tablet to her daughter's white-knuckled hands, and something in her expression shifted, the careful neutrality cracking open into something much older and much more pained. I watched her watching Vanessa, and I understood in that moment that Carol Whitfield had not come to this dinner entirely in support of her daughter's side of the story, not slowly, abruptly, the way a man moves when he has been sitting on something too long and can no longer contain it. His chair scraped against the hardwood with a sound that cut through the low, ambient noise of the restaurant beyond the partition. Patrice flinched. Shelley pulled her water glass closer to her body as if she needed something to hold. "You want to talk about records?" Daniel's voice was rising, the careful performance of the first half of dinner completely gone, now replaced by something raw and more desperate that he was making no attempt to manage. "Fine. Let's talk about records. I'm your only son. I'm the only family you have left. Everything you built this whole career, this reputation you love so much, who was it for? Who was it supposed to go to?" His voice cracked on the last word, and his eyes went bright and wet, and he pointed a trembling finger at the tablet on the table. "You sit there with your spreadsheet like I'm a business expense. Like 38 years of being your son is something I have to justify to you with paperwork." The table held its breath. I could feel every person in that room waiting for me to apologize, to soften, to do the thing I had always done before, which was absorb his anger and respond with accommodation. I looked at my son across the white linen and the half-eaten plates, and the amber light that was doing its best to make everything look warmer than it was. And I spoke quietly, the way I always spoke when I needed what I said to land precisely. I had a neighbor," I said. "Good man. He had a dog for 10 years, a yellow lab named Chester. Every single evening when my neighbor came home, tired late sometimes, in a terrible mood, Chester was at the door. Tail going whole, body moving with it, like my neighbor's arrival was the best thing that had happened all day." I paused one beat. "I raised you for 38 years, Daniel. You repaid me with a canceled boarding pass and a text message telling me to find my own way home." Another beat slower. Chester had more loyalty in 10 years than you showed me in 38. The silence that dropped over that table was absolute. Patrice had her hand pressed over her mouth. Norm was staring at the tablecloth. Shelley's eyes were filling with tears she was visibly struggling to contain. Daniel's face had gone a deep mottled red, not the flush of embarrassment, but the color of a man who has been struck somewhere he did not expect and has not yet decided what to do about it. Vanessa's hands were flat on the table now, perfectly still, her face a controlled mask with something crumbling at the edges. Then Carol Whitfield stood up. Nobody expected it. She pushed back her chair with a deliberateness that made everyone look at her, a woman in her mid-60s, with Vanessa's dark eyes, and a posture that had gone rigid, with something that had been building all evening. She walked the length of the table toward her daughter with measured steps, and the room tracked her in complete suspended attention. She stopped in front of Vanessa. She looked at her daughter for a long moment, and what moved across Carol Whitfield's face was not anger exactly. It was grief. The specific grief of a mother who recognizes her own failures in the person her child has become. Then she leaned down and said something to Vanessa in a voice too low for anyone else at the table to hear. Whatever it was, it landed like a physical blow. Vanessa's head dropped, her shoulders caving forward, tears running fast and silent down her face before she had time to stop them. Carol straightened up and did not look at her daughter again. Her own voice was shaking, but it did not waver. She turned from her daughter and faced me directly, and her eyes were wet, and her chin was trembling, and she clasped her hands in front of her body the way a person does when they need to hold themselves together. Walter, she said, I am sorry for what my daughter helped plan, for what this family has put you through. She pressed her clasped hands tighter. You have been nothing but generous to people who treated your generosity as something they were owed. That is not something I can fix. But I can tell you, and I want everyone at this table to hear me say it, clearly don't give them another dollar. Not one. Giving more will not help them. It will only finish what they've already started doing to themselves. My throat closed completely. I pressed the back of my fingers against my mouth for a moment and breathed through my nose until I was certain my voice would hold. Thank you, Carol, I said. That means more than I can tell you. She nodded once, a small, dignified motion, and walked back to her seat without looking at Vanessa again. Daniel was gripping the back of his chair with both hands, knuckles bone-white chest, heaving with the effort of processing what had just happened in front of every person he had assembled as his audience. His mouth opened and closed twice without producing a word. Vanessa sat with her hand still pressed to her cheek, tears running silently and fast, her mascara tracking dark lines down toward her jaw. She was not looking at anyone. Her whole body had the collapsed posture of a woman who came into a room with a strategy and is watching it disintegrate in real time. I picked up the tablet, closed the document, and placed it back in my bag with the same deliberate calm I used to use when closing a site report at the end of a long day. I had said what I came to say. The room had heard it. Carol Whitfield had said something I had not anticipated and could not have planned for, and it had done more damage to Daniel's carefully constructed narrative than anything I could have brought to that table myself. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. Good night, I said to the table, and I walked out of Harborview Grill into the cool September air where the water was dark and the lights of the city reflected in broken pieces on its surface, and I did not look back. I drove home from Harborview Grill with the windows down and the radio off the way I always do when I need the night air to do the work that thinking cannot. Emily was awake when I came in, sitting at the kitchen table with a textbook open in front of her, that she was clearly not reading her eyes going to the door the instant she heard my key. She looked at my face the way young people look at the faces of people they love when they are trying to read the damage before they ask about it. "Ma, how bad was it?" she asked. "Your grandmother walked to your mother and said something to her quietly, just between the two of them. Whatever it was, it broke her. Then she stood up, faced the whole table, and apologized to me out loud in front of everyone," I said, hanging up my jacket. Emily's mouth fell open. Her hand went flat on the textbook. "Carol did that." "She did," I said. "And then she told me not to give your father another dollar and apologized for what her daughter had helped do." I put the kettle on. It was the most unexpected thing that has happened to me in 30 years. And I mean that as a sincere compliment to your grandmother. Emily stared at me for a long moment. Then her eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears, but the overwhelmed kind that come when something has been wrong for so long, that a single moment of rightness is almost more than the nervous system can process. She pressed both hands over her face and made a sound that was half sob and half something closer to relief. "I'm okay," she said through her hands. "I'm okay, I just—" She dropped her hands and looked at me, eyes red and wet and bright. "I've been so scared for you, Grandpa, for months. I didn't know how it was going to end." "Neither did I," said honestly. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. Daniel did not call. Vanessa did not call. The silence had a different texture than the silences before, not the held breath of a man planning his next move, but something more hollowed out. Something that had stopped trying. Emily told me what happened at the house on the Wednesday after the dinner. She had gone back to collect the rest of her things, a second trip, mostly books and winter clothes, and she had arrived to find the house in a state she described to me that evening at the kitchen table. Her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea, her voice very steady in the way of someone narrating something they needed to process out loud. "Mom was in the bedroom," Emily said. She had 3 suitcases open on the bed. Not panicking, that's what was strange about it. She was just organized, like she'd made a list in her head and was working through it, folding things, putting them in. Very calm. "Did she say anything to you?" I asked. Emily's jaw tightened slightly. She said, "I'm sorry you had to see all of this, baby." That's it. She didn't explain. She didn't tell me where she was going. A beat. She kissed me on the forehead and kept packing. "And your father?" I asked. Emily's expression shifted into something more complicated, a mix of pity and weariness that looked too old for a 16-year-old's face. "He came home while I was still there. He walked in and saw the suitcases and he grabbed her arm and said, 'Vanessa, stop. We can fix this. We can still fix this.'" And his voice, Emily's own voice, dropped. Grandpa, I've never heard him sound like that. Like he was actually scared, not of losing money. Just scared. My chest tightened with something I had not anticipated feeling. Not satisfaction. Something more like the dull, heavy ache of watching a consequence arrive that was entirely deserved and entirely painful at once. "What did she say?" I asked quietly. Emily set her mug down carefully. She said, "The will is changed, Daniel. The house goes to Emily. There's nothing left to wait for." Emily's voice was very flat, relaying it the flatness of someone repeating words they have memorized because the words are too sharp to hold loosely. And then she picked up 2 of the suitcases and walked out. He stood in the hallway holding the 3rd one she'd left behind. He didn't follow her. I pressed my thumb and forefinger against the bridge of my nose and held them there for a moment. Breathed. "Emily." I said, "How are you?" not asking as a report, asking as your grandfather. She looked at me for a long moment. Her chin wobbled once before she controlled it. Her eyes were very bright. I don't know how to feel about her leaving, she said. She's my mom. Even when she was even knowing what she did, she's still my mom. Her voice broke on the last word, just slightly, just enough. Is that stupid? No, I said. That is exactly right. And it does not have to be resolved tonight. She nodded, pressing her lips together hard. She picked up her mug again and wrapped both hands around it and looked at the table. Her shoulders shook once, just once, and then she pulled in a long breath and let it out slowly. I made more tea. We sat at the kitchen table while the autumn rain started against the windows, quiet in the way of two people who had run out of words for the evening, but were not ready to stop being in the same room. That week I received a brief call from Claire Hartwell. Divorce proceedings had been filed. The paperwork was moving. Hayes Construction had formally entered receivership, which meant its remaining assets would be administered by a court-appointed trustee to satisfy outstanding debts. Daniel's truck had been repossessed by the lender on the same day. I listened to each piece of information, with my eyes on the garden through the kitchen window, where the last of the season's tomato vines had gone brown and brittle in the October cold. Thank you, Claire, I said. There's nothing else that requires your attention at this time, she said. Good, I said. And I meant it entirely. The doorbell rang at 9:15 on a November evening, while I was reading in the armchair by the front window, Emily already upstairs for the night. The rain had been coming down hard since mid-afternoon, the kind of Pacific Northwest November rain that does not announce itself or apologize, just arrives and settles in, like it owns the place. I checked the camera on my phone before I moved. Daniel was standing on the front step in a jacket that had gone dark with rain, his hair plastered flat water running off the end of his nose. He was not holding an umbrella. He looked like a man who had driven somewhere without thinking clearly enough to bring one. I set my book face down on the armrest and went to the door. He was worse than I expected. The weight he had lost since September was visible in his face, sharper jaw, hollowed cheeks. The particular gauntness that comes not from discipline, but from months of not eating regularly because the appetite has been consumed by something else. His eyes, when he looked at me, were red-rimmed and raw, the eyes of someone who had been crying in the car on the way over and had not fully stopped. "Dad," he said. His voice was wrecked, hoarse, and cracked and stripped of everything it usually carried. "I have nothing left. The company is gone. Vanessa's gone. They took the truck last month. I'm staying in a motel off Route 9. His chin buckled visibly. I don't have anyone else to call. My chest tightened with something that was not softness and was not cruelty, something older and more exhausted than either. Daniel, I said. He pressed on his voice, breaking fully. Now tears cutting through the rain, already on his face. I know what I did. I know it was wrong. I know I can't take it back. But please, please just tell me there's something left. That I'm not completely, that you haven't completely. He could not finish the sentence. His knees went and he grabbed the doorframe with both hands to keep from going down entirely, his knuckles white against the wood, his whole body shaking with the effort of holding himself upright under the weight of everything he had lost. I looked at my son. This man I had taught to ride a bicycle had driven to baseball practice, had watched graduates standing in the rain, with nothing left to bargain with, and no performance left to give. Just the bare fact of him broken and wet, and 38 years old, asking his father not to be finished with him. The door between us was still open. I did not step back. I did not reach out. Daniel, I said, and my voice came out very low and very steady. I used to lie awake thinking that what you did at that airport was the worst thing you'd ever done to me. But standing here tonight, I realize I owe you something I didn't expect to feel. Gratitude. He blinked, water running into his eyes. What? That canceled ticket showed me something I had been too stubborn to see for 38 years. My job as your father, the real job, the one that mattered, it was finished a long time ago. I did it. It's done. I held his gaze. What happens to you from here, Daniel? That belongs to you, not to me. I stepped back. Find your own way home, son. I closed the door. The lock caught with a single clean sound. I stood on my side of it for a moment, my hand still on the knob, listening to the rain and to the sound of Daniel's breathing on the other side, ragged and broken, and slowly going quiet. Then footsteps unsteady moving away across the wet porch. Then the distant sound of a car door. Then nothing but the rain. I turned and found Emily standing at the top of the stairs, looking down at me with Carol Ann's serious eyes. Go to sleep, I said quietly. School tomorrow. She nodded and disappeared into the hallway without a word. I turned off the porch light and went back to my chair. I picked up my book. Outside, the rain kept falling. I left for Monterey on the second Friday of December before sunrise, with a thermos of coffee and no particular schedule. Emily had walked me to the car the evening before, arms wrapped around herself against the cold, and pressed her cheek against my shoulder for a moment before she stepped back. Drive safe, she said, her breath making small clouds in the December air. Call me when you get there. I will, I said. Water the tomato seedlings on the windowsill. Don't let them dry out. She rolled her eyes with the particular warmth of a young person who has learned to receive love in the form of practical instructions. Grandpa. Emily. She laughed that unguarded laugh and went back inside. I sat in the car for a moment in the dark driveway before I started the engine. The drive south took 11 hours with a lunch stop in Medford, Oregon, a diner with good pie, and a waitress named Donna who refilled my coffee without being asked and called me honey without irony. I tipped generously and got back on the highway, feeling for no particular reason that the world was full of decent people quietly doing their jobs. I reached the coast as the sun was going low. The light on the water off Carmel was exactly what I had imagined in June when I booked that first vacation, gold and heavy, lying flat on the surface like something poured. I had not seen it then. I was seeing it now. Better late, I thought. Better late than never getting here at all. The hotel was small, 12 rooms, weathered shingles, a porch that looked directly at the water. Nothing like the house I had booked for the family. That had been about impressing people with space and expense. This was about the view. Those are different things, and I had finally learned to tell them apart. I called Robert from the porch after dinner, a glass of Sonoma Pinot in my hand, and the Pacific going dark in front of me. How is it? He asked. Perfect, I said. Quiet. Exactly the right size. How do you feel? I thought about that genuinely the way the question deserved. Like a man who put down something very heavy, I said, and walked far enough away that he can't hear it anymore. Robert was quiet for a moment on his end, a good quiet, the kind between people who don't need to fill space. Good, he said finally. That's exactly right. I thought about Daniel. Not with anger, not with grief, exactly more the way you think about a structural flaw you identified too late to prevent damage, but early enough to stop it from taking everything down. He was out there somewhere carrying what was his to carry now. I hoped he found his footing. I genuinely did. But that hoping was no longer my work to do. I thought about the cashier's check still somewhere in my files at home, the one I had carried in my briefcase to the airport in June, $100,000, for a man who had been planning that same morning to leave me stranded. I had never cashed it, never voided it. At some point I would, but not yet. It remained for now evidence of the last good thing I had almost done, and almost was enough. Almost was the whole story. I finished my wine. The stars over the Pacific came out one at a time, the way they do when the marine layer is thin slowly, then all at once. Carol Ann had loved stars. She used to make me name the ones I knew, which was not many, and invent names for the ones I didn't, which was most of them. "That one's the engineer," I used to say, pointing at random. "It doesn't look like an engineer," she always said. "It's load-bearing," I told her. "You can't tell from the outside?" She laughed every time, every single time. I sat on the porch until the cold came in off the water and made staying impractical. Then I went inside, got into a bed that was exactly the right size for one person, and slept without dreaming. In the morning, I walked the beach at Carmel, which is white sand and cold wind and absolute indifference to human trouble. And I thought I built a good life. I made some costly mistakes along the way about who deserved access to it. But the life itself, the work, the house, the garden, Emily's laugh, Robert's steadiness, Carol Ann's stars, that was mine. It had always been mine. Nobody canceled that. People ask me sometimes whether I regret how things ended, whether I wish I had been softer, more forgiving, more willing to give Daniel one more chance. I think about that question the way I think about structural failures, honestly, without flattering myself. The truth is, I was soft for 38 years. I called it love. Some of it was. But some of it was cowardice dressed in a father's clothing, the refusal to hold someone accountable because accountability is painful, and writing a check is easier. If I had been braver earlier, Daniel might have learned to build something real instead of waiting to inherit what I built. That is not his failure alone. That is mine too. So if you are out there carrying someone else's weight right now, paying for someone who takes without gratitude, making yourself smaller so they can feel larger, hear me when I say this. Don't wait as long as I did. Generosity without boundaries is not kindness. It is a slow erosion of everything you worked for. I believe God gives every person exactly the lessons they need, delivered in exactly the way they are most able to receive them. Mine arrived at Gate B7 in Seattle on a Tuesday morning in June. I did not choose it, but I chose what I did next. These are the quiet truths behind the loudest family justice stories, the ones nobody posts about the ones that live in bank statements and locked doors and cashier's checks never cashed. If this story reached something in, you leave a comment below and tell me what you felt. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe in family justice the way I do, that dignity is worth protecting at any age, subscribe to this channel. There are more family justice stories coming, and every one of them is worth your time. The best revenge stories family members never see coming are the quiet ones. No courtroom, no confrontation, just a man who finally stopped paying for his own disrespect. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know. The stories on this channel contain fictional elements, crafted for the purpose of reflection and life lessons. If the themes don't speak to you, we completely understand. Feel free to explore other content that serves you better. But if you're still here, we're grateful.